she woke to scratching at her cabin door. Her heart pounded. Something huge was outside, watching, waiting. And it wasn't leaving. What would you have done if you found a bear at your door in the dead of night? The scratching started as a whisper, faint enough that she thought she might be dreaming. But then it came again, louder, sharper, deliberate. She froze, every muscle in her body tightening. The thin wooden door of the cabin rattled slightly with each impact, and her pulse thundered in her ears. Something was outside. Something big. Something alive. Her hands instinctively went to the kitchen knife resting on the counter, the cold metal grounding her against the fear crawling up her spine. Her eyes darted around the cabin, catching familiar objects in the soft moonlight, the framed photograph of her late father, the teacups drying on the counter, the firewood stacked neatly in the corner, and yet none of it mattered. Nothing felt safe anymore. The scratching paused. Silence followed, stretching unbearably. Her breath caught, and she realized she could hear every sound, the distant gurgle of the stream behind the cabin, the whistle of wind through the pines, the faint scurrying of a night creature. Then the sound returned, heavier, deliberate, insistent. Her stomach churned. Whoever, or whatever, it was testing her, gauging her reactions. She edged toward the small window next to the door, keeping the knife raised in front of her. Through the crack in the curtain, she saw movement, massive, hulking, dark against the faint glow of the moon. Amber eyes glimmered in the shadows, focused on her. She froze, heart hammering. It was a bear, a full-grown brown bear, standing on its hind legs at her cabin door, its paws scraping against the weathered wood. Fear collided with awe. She had seen bears before in the forests around her, but never this close. Never like this. Her mind raced. Should she scream? Should she stay silent? Should she attempt to open the door, or would that be the end of everything she knew? The bear's gaze was unwavering, unblinking, intelligent. There was no malice, only a quiet insistence, a silent demand she could not ignore. She retreated a step, trying to think clearly. The bear scratched again, more urgently this time, and the sound resonated through the cabin like a warning. Her mind spun with possibilities. Was it after food? Shelter? Or something else she couldn't yet comprehend? Memories of survival shows, wildlife warnings, and horror stories flooded her, but none of them captured this, the raw immediacy of life staring her down in her own home. Then the bear shifted. It lowered itself slightly, sniffed the air, and circled to the side of the cabin, still watching, still waiting. The sheer patience of the animal unnerved her more than its size or strength. It wasn't attacking, but it wasn't leaving either. Its presence was a test, and she was failing it by standing still, paralyzed by fear. A thought struck her, sharp and sudden. What would she do if she truly had no choice? What if the bear decided that silence was defiance, and defiance deserved action? She imagined the worst, and it paralyzed her further. Her knife felt useless against this force of nature. She could run, but there was nowhere to run. The cabin sat alone in the clearing, surrounded by forest, miles from the nearest road, miles from anyone who could help. The bear's amber eyes locked onto hers again. In them, she glimpsed something unexpected: recognition, intelligence, a hint of curiosity. The creature wasn't merely hunting or threatening. It was interacting, communicating in the only ways it knew how. And somehow, that made it even more terrifying. The scratching stopped abruptly. Silence fell again, heavy and almost tangible. She held her breath, waiting for a sound, any sound, and then she heard a faint rustle behind her, small, almost imperceptible. Her gaze flicked over her shoulder. Nothing. The bear, however, twitched its ears and tilted its massive head toward the same direction, alert. A second presence, unseen, moved in the shadows of the forest. Her pulse quickened. Her rational mind screamed at her to stay calm, to remember her training, her instincts. Yet her body refused to listen. Fear had anchored itself deep inside, a tangible weight pressing her to the spot. Slowly, she sank to the floor, keeping her eyes on the door, the knife still raised. The bear, patient, waited, its silhouette a dark monument against the moonlit cabin door. Minutes passed like hours. She whispered to herself, soft, trembling words meant to comfort, though they barely reached her own ears, "Stay calm, just stay calm." The bear's gaze never wavered, but something shifted. Its posture relaxed slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of her presence, of her caution, of her respect. And in that instant, an unspoken understanding formed, tenuous but undeniable. Then, just as she allowed herself a fraction of hope, a low, guttural growl echoed from somewhere beyond the clearing. It was not the bear at the door. It was something else, something moving in the woods. The bear stiffened, muscles coiling, its eyes flicking toward the darkness behind her. Fear returned, sharper than before, but now mixed with a strange, wild admiration. The bear was not only present but protective, aware of a threat she could not yet see. Her heart raced, her mind reeled, and a single question burned through her thoughts: how had she ended up here, in the middle of nowhere, face to face with one of nature's greatest predators, yet somehow not feeling entirely alone? The scratching resumed, louder this time, insistent, demanding. She realized she had to make a choice: act, retreat, or wait. Each option carried danger, uncertainty, consequences she could not fully predict. As the scratching reached a frantic rhythm, she glanced through the small window one last time and saw movement behind the bear, a shadow gliding between trees. Whatever it was coming closer. Morning arrived slowly, pale light filtering through the trees and brushing the cabin in soft gold. She had spent the night sitting rigidly near the door, listening to every sound: the creak of wood, the faint rustle of leaves, the distant trickle of the stream, yet the bear had remained. At dawn, it had retreated slightly, sitting on its haunches near the edge of the clearing, amber eyes fixed on her, alert but calm. She exhaled shakily, lowering the knife. Her limbs ached from the tension, but curiosity outweighed fear now. Slowly, cautiously, she opened the cabin door a crack, enough to slip a small handful of berries onto the porch. The bear watched, sniffed, and then hesitated. Its gaze flicked between her and the offering. A shiver ran down her spine. She could feel the weight of its intelligence, the depth of its awareness. This was no mindless predator, this was a thinking, observing creature. The bear approached the food carefully, sniffing before picking a few berries with precise movements of its massive paw. It glanced at her again, then backed off slightly, maintaining a careful distance. There was an unspoken negotiation occurring. She understood instinctively that any sudden movement could trigger a fight or a flight, and either would be dangerous. She remained frozen, her eyes locked on the creature, and felt a strange mix of fear and awe. Over the next hours, she experimented subtly. She placed small morsels at various distances, noting the bear's reaction. Some it ignored, others it accepted, nudging them closer to her feet as if guiding her understanding. Each gesture, each movement, carried meaning, a language without words. She found herself speaking softly, narrating her actions, almost as if the bear could understand her. "It's okay. I won't hurt you. You can trust me." The bear's eyes followed her, attentive, as though assessing her sincerity. By mid-morning, she ventured slightly further, stepping into the clearing with slow, deliberate movements. The bear rose, circling the perimeter of the cabin, protective yet non-aggressive. She realized this was no ordinary encounter. This bear was engaged in a strange ritual of observation, testing boundaries, gauging behavior. Every instinct she had screamed to run, to defend herself, yet another part, deeper, quieter, urged patience. Her experiments were interrupted by a sudden noise from the forest behind the cabin, snapping branches, rustling leaves, heavier than any small animal. The bear stiffened instantly, ears forward, muscles taut. Its posture shifted from wary to defensive, standing taller, the fur along its neck subtly raised. She froze, gripping the knife tighter, realizing that she was not alone. Something was moving in the shadows beyond the clearing. Instinctively, she scanned the forest. Sunlight cut through the mist, illuminating shapes and branches, but nothing moved clearly. Yet the bear's reaction was enough to tell her that this was significant. She noticed the way it positioned itself between her and the unseen threat, protective and unwavering. Her heart surged with a mix of relief and terror. The bear was her guardian now, and whatever approached would have to pass through it first. Hungry and cautious, she considered leaving the cabin for a moment, knowing the bear would follow her movements closely. She stepped toward the wood's edge to collect firewood, and the bear mirrored her steps at a safe distance. Its vigilance never wavered, eyes constantly flicking between her, the surroundings, and the shadows. She marveled at its awareness, a creature entirely wild, yet demonstrating a protective instinct that defied the boundaries of species. Hours passed in this tense dance. Every step, every glance carried weight. She spoke softly, explaining her movements, her intentions, her fears. The bear seemed to listen, responding with subtle shifts in posture, occasional huffs, and head tilts. It had become more than an animal. It was a companion in silence, a mirror to her own fragility and courage. Then came a moment that changed everything. The bear approached a pile of scraps she had left near the porch, not for hunger, but perhaps as a test. It nudged them with deliberate force, then paused, looking back at her with those deep amber eyes. A sudden understanding struck her. This was a gesture of communication, an invitation to learn, to participate in this shared wilderness. But the calm was short-lived. A distant growl echoed through the trees, low and menacing, unlike anything she had heard before. The bear stiffened immediately, turning toward the sound. Her stomach knotted. This was not a small animal, and the bear's alertness told her it was dangerous. She scanned the forest, adrenaline spiking. Shapes shifted between mist and tree trunks, fleeting shadows that hinted at something larger. The bear's protective instincts took full control. It positioned itself between her and the potential threat, muscles coiled, eyes locked on the forest edge. She realized that whatever was coming was unaware of her presence but fully noticed by the bear. A surge of trust mingled with fear. She was safe only because of this creature's vigilance. Just as she exhaled, a sudden crack from the underbrush closer than she expected, not from a human, not from a deer, sent the bear into immediate alert. It let out a deep, resonant huff, and she saw movement in the shadows that made her blood run cold. Something was approaching, and she was not ready for what she was about to face. The forest seemed to close in around her as evening descended. Mist drifted along the ground, curling around the trunks of ancient pines and making familiar trees appear strange and menacing. The cabin, her sanctuary during daylight hours, now felt vulnerable, exposed to the unknown. She gripped the flickering lantern tighter, its warm glow barely cutting through the thickening gloom. The bear remained near the cabin, a sentinel in the shifting shadows. It had been watching her all day, moving with her as she gathered firewood, nudging her subtly away from precarious spots, and occasionally huffing softly in approval when she left small offerings of food outside. Its presence had become a strange comfort, though it also heightened every sense of awareness she possessed. She knew that one misstep could provoke an unpredictable response from a creature capable of incredible power. As the sun dipped lower, she noticed subtle changes in the bear's posture. It paced a little more, sniffing the air, ears twitching. Something was out there, something larger than a deer, more deliberate than the wind. Her pulse quickened. She realized she was no longer observing the forest from the safety of her cabin, she was part of it, and the bear was guiding her through its rules. She set down a few scattered pieces of bread on the porch and watched the bear approach. It sniffed, nudged them slightly, and then froze. Its gaze swept past her toward the forest, focused and unwavering. A rustling in the underbrush made her stomach tighten. She turned slowly, just in time to glimpse the shadow of another creature moving between the trees. Larger than a fox, smaller than the bear, it moved with a purpose. The bear rose to its full height, muscles coiled, and huffed low and threatening. The sound reverberated across the clearing. The unseen creature froze. The woman's heart pounded, and she instinctively stepped back toward the cabin, raising the lantern higher. She felt exposed, aware that the bear was the barrier between her and the unknown. Every instinct screamed to run, but she also felt a peculiar trust in the creature that had been patiently observing her all day. She remembered the food she had left. Slowly, carefully, she tried placing more offerings further into the clearing, hoping to distract the unknown threat or perhaps signal to the bear that she understood its silent communication. The bear's amber eyes flicked to each placement, then back to the forest, then to her. Each glance conveyed something she couldn't fully articulate: gratitude, caution, awareness. Minutes dragged into hours. The shadows deepened, the mist thickened, and the forest grew alive with sounds she had never noticed before. The distant cracking of branches, the soft tap of something heavy moving through undergrowth, the occasional call of a night bird. The bear's vigilance never wavered. It had become her eyes and ears in a place where she had none of her own. Suddenly, the rustling grew louder, closer. Something, or someone, was moving rapidly toward the cabin. The bear huffed sharply, low and resonant, warning her. She froze, recognizing the sound not as aggression but as intent: prepare, brace, survive. She dropped to a crouch, lantern low, watching as the shadows parted slightly to reveal movement: a second bear, larger, formidable, approaching with a deliberate stride. Her mind raced. This wasn't what she expected. The bear at her cabin had been alone, protective, cautious, curious. Now, a rival entered its territory. The two animals' eyes met, amber against dark brown, and tension radiated through the clearing like electricity. She had never imagined herself in a scenario where understanding the silent language of wild animals was not just a curiosity but a necessity for her survival. The cabin bear stood firmly between her and the newcomer, growling low in its throat, body tense, muscles flexing under its thick fur. The newcomer paused at the edge of the clearing, sniffing, circling, assessing. She felt the ground under her feet tremble slightly with the weight of their power. Every instinct in her screamed danger. She wished desperately that she could disappear, that she could merge with the mist and leave this confrontation to the animals. The cabin bear huffed again, louder this time, stepping slightly forward, nudging her gently back toward the safety of the cabin. She realized the creature was not only guarding its territory but also shielding her. Her presence mattered to it. She felt a surge of gratitude mingled with fear. She was utterly alone in the forest, reliant on a wild predator she had never known, and yet she trusted it more than any human she had ever met. Minutes passed in tense silence. The newcomer bear finally retreated a few steps but lingered at the edge of the clearing, marking its presence with low grunts and a stomp of its massive paw. The cabin bear remained alert, following its movements with unwavering attention, never taking its eyes off her for long. She understood now, this was not just survival, it was a negotiation, a test of boundaries and trust in which she had become an unwilling participant. Her hands were shaking, lantern light wavering, sweat running down her back. She realized she had to respect the rules of this wild world if she hoped to survive another night. One wrong move, one sudden gesture, and she could trigger a catastrophic response. Yet even in the midst of fear, she felt a strange connection, a sense of awe at the depth of instinct and intelligence displayed before her. Just as she dared to take a breath, a snapping branch sounded much closer than before, almost at the edge of the cabin porch. The cabin bear's growl deepened, its eyes fixed on the shadows, and she saw a flicker of movement, fast, deliberate, and unnervingly close. Whatever it was coming for them. The storm arrived without warning. Heavy rain pounded the roof of the cabin, cascading down its wooden sides and drenching the forest floor in a slick, glistening sheen. The woman's hair clung to her face, and her clothes were soaked, sticking uncomfortably to her body. Thunder rumbled across the sky, vibrating through the cabin walls, and lightning illuminated the forest in brief, jagged bursts. She shivered, gripping the lantern, trying to keep it steady. Her attention snapped immediately to the clearing. The bear was tense, low to the ground, ears flicking, muscles coiled. It had taken shelter near the porch but remained alert, constantly scanning the shifting shadows of the forest. Its behavior suggested awareness of something she could not yet see. And then she noticed it. A second bear emerged from the darkened woods, larger, broader, more formidable than the cabin bear. Its eyes glinted with aggression and territorial authority. She froze. This was not a simple encounter, this was a confrontation. The cabin bear responded instantly, positioning itself directly between her and the newcomer. Its growl was deep and resonant, vibrating through her chest. She had expected fear, perhaps flight, but instead, she witnessed an instinctual defense, a willingness to protect her at any cost. Her mind raced. Why was this happening now, and why did it seem so personal, so deliberate? The newcomer bear advanced cautiously, sniffing the air, circling the clearing. Every movement it made radiated power. The cabin bear responded with measured huffs, pawing the ground, its posture protective and commanding. She realized suddenly that the bear had been keeping her safe all along. Its behavior, its nightly visits, its patience, were not just about curiosity or hunger. It was watching over her, guarding her from unseen threats that she had only begun to sense. Her heart thudded as the storm raged on. Rain soaked the ground, turning dirt into mud, the scent of wet earth mingling with the animal musk of the bears. She understood something profound. The bear had chosen her, accepted her presence, and now was demonstrating loyalty in a way she had never imagined. She knelt, speaking softly to it, words trembling through the roar of rain. I trust you. I don't want to hurt you. The cabin bear's ears twitched, and it made a low, almost approving sound, but it did not relax. The other bear lingered, testing boundaries, its intent unclear. And then, almost imperceptibly, the cabin bear nudged her gently backward, toward the safety of the cabin, positioning itself as a shield. Her pulse raced with a mixture of fear and awe. She had never experienced this level of nonverbal communication with any creature, human or animal. Minutes passed like hours. The newcomer bear circled, testing, assessing, then finally retreated slightly. The cabin bear remained alert, watching every movement, every shadow. She realized now that its nightly visits, the scratching at the door, the careful observation, all of it had been preparation. A silent communication that she was to be trusted, but only if she respected the rules of its world. Her mind reeled. She had thought she was alone in the forest, that she had only the cabin for protection. Instead, she had been part of a silent alliance with a creature of the wild, one whose intelligence and instincts far exceeded her understanding. She had been under its protection, unknowingly guided by its awareness of dangers she could not perceive. Then came the most unexpected moment. The cabin bear shifted, lowering its massive head and sniffing at her hand. Tentatively, she extended a wet, trembling palm. The bear nudged it lightly, not with aggression but with a strange gentleness. She gasped, realizing fully that this was trust, an emotional bond forming in the middle of a storm, with survival and danger surrounding them. The rain intensified. The distant growl of the forest predator faded, drowned in the roar of the storm, and she felt a fleeting, fragile sense of safety. The cabin bear nudged her again, encouraging her to rise, and she understood instinctively it was guiding her, teaching her how to move through this world, how to survive, how to respect the forces of nature that were far beyond her control. Her awe was interrupted by a sudden, sharp noise from the woods, a crack of a branch, followed by a rustle far too large for a deer or a fox. She froze. The bear stiffened instantly, growling low and rumbling in a way that vibrated through her chest. It was alert, focused, protective. The forest seemed to hold its breath. As lightning struck a tree at the edge of the clearing, illuminating the scene in blinding white light, she saw a shadowy figure moving rapidly between trees, heading directly toward the cabin. The bear's low growl deepened, and she realized that the real threat was far closer than she had imagined, and that her survival, for the first time, depended entirely on this wild guardian at her side. Morning arrived with a delicate, eerie stillness. The storm had passed, leaving the forest dripping, saturated, alive with the smells of wet pine and moss. The cabin sat at the heart of the clearing, its wooden structure glistening with rain, steam rising from its roof as the interior warmth met the cold morning air. She had spent the night near the porch, shivering but alive, every sound from the forest cutting sharply through the dawn. The bear remained close, a silent guardian. Its amber eyes followed her movements, careful and deliberate, and she felt the subtle shift in tension that came when it detected a threat she could not yet identify. Her limbs ached, muscles stiff from the previous night's adrenaline and fear, but she knew she had to gather firewood and prepare the cabin for the day. Every step she took was measured, careful, because she understood now that her life depended on moving in harmony with the bear's awareness. She ventured into the clearing, collecting broken branches and logs, mindful of her surroundings. The bear mirrored her movements from a few feet away, alert, growling low at occasional sounds from the forest's depths. There was a strange rhythm to their interaction. She moved, it observed, she paused, it reassessed. This silent choreography carried a weight beyond explanation, A raw intimacy between human and predator that defied ordinary understanding. As she stacked logs near the cabin, she noticed paw prints in the mud leading toward the stream behind the clearing. They were fresh, deep impressions, the cabin bear's movements having left them clearly visible. She recognized their pattern, their deliberate spacing, and felt a shiver of respect and fear. The bear's intelligence was profound, every movement conveyed communication, protection, observation. She was not alone. She had never truly been alone. Then she saw something that made her heart stop. Alongside the bear's tracks were smaller prints, human, careful, light. Someone had been here during the night, unseen but present, observing them both. Her pulse quickened. The forest had become a layered web of awareness, survival, and danger. The bear's protective instincts flared, it moved between her and the tracks, low growl vibrating in its chest. She stepped closer to investigate, curiosity mixing with fear. The prints were recent, the soil still moist from the storm. Whoever had passed by had left quickly, leaving subtle traces, a broken twig, a scuff in the mud. She realized that the forest was not just a place of wildness but of hidden human intent, poachers, hunters, or strangers whose presence could bring immediate danger. The cabin bear sensed it too. Its stance was taut, muscles rippling under wet fur, every instinct alert. She moved cautiously back toward the cabin. The bear followed closely, nudging her gently when she paused, urging her to move carefully. The mutual understanding between them had grown overnight. The bear was not merely an observer anymore, it was a partner in survival, guiding her with a combination of instinct and intelligence. She felt an overwhelming mix of gratitude, fear, and wonder. Hours passed. The bear's presence remained a constant reassurance and a source of tension. She had begun leaving small offerings of food, berries, scraps, water. The bear accepted some, nudged others, and occasionally ignored them completely, directing her attention to other survival needs. Each interaction reinforced the silent dialogue between them, a delicate balance of trust and caution. But the forest held its secrets tightly. A sudden snapping of branches from deeper within the trees caused both of them to tense. The bear growled low and sharp, stepping protectively in front of her. She froze, recognizing instinctive awareness beyond human comprehension. The source of the sound remained unseen, but its intent felt deliberate. The bear positioned itself carefully, its gaze scanning every shadow, every movement. As she stood frozen, the forest shifted again, this time, a larger shape moved swiftly through the undergrowth, too purposeful to be another deer or small predator. The cabin bear's growl deepened, and she realized with a jolt that the real danger, whatever it was approaching faster than she could react. Her pulse raced, knowing her life now depended entirely on the instincts and protection of this wild, powerful guardian. Dawn broke with a fragile golden glow, softening the forest after the storm's fury. The rain had stopped, leaving droplets glittering on pine needles, the cabin roof, and the damp earth beneath her feet. The forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, though she knew that survival in these woods was never certain. Every sound carried meaning, the distant call of a bird, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the soft snap of a branch under a small animal's foot. She knelt near the cabin bear, offering pieces of dried bread and berries she had gathered the previous day. The bear accepted them slowly, deliberately, maintaining the balance between trust and vigilance. She watched its amber eyes, noting the way it scanned the forest even while eating. The bond between them had deepened over the last 2 days, a silent understanding born of shared experience, danger, and protection. The intruder had retreated at the edge of the clearing, finally disappearing into the forest's shadowy depths. She didn't feel anger toward them, only a tempered relief. The bear had assessed the situation, determined the intruder posed no immediate danger, and managed the interaction without unnecessary violence. She realized fully that the creature had not only guarded her but had demonstrated a level of intelligence, judgment, and patience she had never witnessed before. Her mind drifted back to the storm, to the moments when the bear had guided her movements, nudged her toward safety, and positioned itself between her and unseen threats. Each memory carried a weight of awe and gratitude. Survival in the wilderness was a delicate dance of observation, respect, and instinct, lessons she had learned in hours rather than years. As the morning light strengthened, she decided to take the bear deeper into the clearing, offering water from the stream. She knelt by the edge, splashing cool, clear water into her cupped hands, then guiding the bear to drink gently. Its massive head lowered with a grace that belied its size, amber eyes flicking to her with a silent acknowledgement. In that moment, she understood the true depth of their connection. It was not just protection, but partnership, mutual recognition of each other's presence and vulnerability. She noticed subtle movements in the undergrowth, small creatures emerging after the storm, cautious yet curious. The bear observed these with quiet patience, reminding her that this world operated on a complex web of relationships, instinct, and survival. Each choice, each movement, had consequences, and she had been fortunate to learn these lessons from a creature whose intelligence and awareness surpassed her comprehension. Hours passed in a rhythm of quiet observation and gentle care. She learned to move without startling the bear, to respect its personal space, to anticipate its subtle cues. The cabin clearing became a classroom of instincts, the bear its patient, watchful teacher. She marveled at the depth of understanding she could achieve without words, through mere observation, touch, and presence. Yet the forest was never without tension. From the edge of her vision, she caught glimpses of movement, shadows shifting, branches bending, subtle reminders that this wilderness was alive, unpredictable, and always watching. She remained vigilant, aware that danger could return at any moment, that survival was not a guarantee but a delicate balance of respect, patience, and awareness. Just as she knelt beside the bear, letting its massive head rest lightly against her shoulder, a low, distant rumble rolled through the forest. It was heavier, more deliberate than before, vibrating through the ground beneath her. The bear's ears twitched, muscles coiling instinctively. She felt the hair on her arms rise and realized with a jolt that another presence, something massive, approaching with intent, was moving closer. And this time, there was no telling whether they would have enough time to respond. The growl had come again, closer now, resonating through the trees like a low drum. Her heart raced uncontrollably, each beat echoing the tension building in the clearing. The bear remained calm but alert, moving to position itself squarely between her and the forest's edge. Its massive frame radiated both strength and precision, muscles rippling under thick, wet fur. Every instinct she had screamed that danger was imminent. She crouched behind the stack of firewood she had gathered earlier, trying to make herself small and non-threatening. The bear growled again, this time a deep, resonant rumble that reverberated through the clearing. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the mist curling around tree trunks as though suspended in anticipation. She realized she could not see the source of the threat clearly, yet every subtle shift in the bear's posture told her everything she needed to know. It was close, deliberate, and potentially lethal. Suddenly, a shape burst through the mist. Not another bear, but a human figure, tall and thin, clad in dark clothing. The movement was aggressive, purposeful, and her stomach tightened. She had suspected human interference, poachers, hunters, strangers, but seeing one this close made it terrifyingly real. The cabin bear let out a sharp, low growl, raising itself on all fours, fur bristling, eyes locked on the intruder. Its stance was a warning, do not come closer. The intruder froze, clearly surprised by the bear's presence. She felt a strange mix of relief and fear. The bear was standing between her and this potential threat, but she knew that one wrong move could trigger an attack. She whispered to herself, her voice trembling, "Stay calm, don't make sudden movements." The bear's growl softened slightly, an almost imperceptible acknowledgement that it understood her presence but remained vigilant. The intruder took a cautious step forward, reaching for something in their bag. The bear shifted slightly, moving with fluid precision, positioning itself even more protectively. She could feel the tension in its muscles, the intensity of its gaze, and she realized that the creature's awareness far exceeded anything she could comprehend. She had been relying on it all along, trusting instincts honed by survival in the wild, instincts that now dictated both her life and the intruder's behavior. Time seemed to stretch. The intruder's movements were slow, deliberate, and careful, aware of the bear but unaware of its full capabilities. She noticed that the bear was not aggressive for the sake of dominance. It was guarding, negotiating through presence and posture. Every subtle huff, shift in weight, and flick of its ears conveyed communication, strategy, and intention. The bond they shared had evolved from trust to active protection, a silent alliance forged under extreme pressure. Suddenly, the intruder moved faster, stepping into the clearing with a snap of a branch. The bear responded instantly, huffing sharply, stepping forward with calculated force. Its amber eyes locked onto the human, unblinking, commanding attention and respect. She realized with a jolt that she was witnessing pure instinctive negotiation. The bear was defending its territory, her presence, and the fragile trust between them. Fear surged through her, but she also felt awe. The bear's movements were precise, deliberate, and terrifyingly efficient. Its body language told her everything. The intruder was a threat, the forest was alive, and she was part of a delicate balance that could collapse in a single moment. She tried to make herself smaller, crouching further, whispering soft, trembling words to the bear, "You've got this. I trust you." The intruder froze again, clearly re-evaluating their approach. She caught a glimpse of their hands, one holding a camera, the other a small stick or tool. Perhaps they had been curious, documenting wildlife, but the bear interpreted it as a threat. Every instinct of protection, every memory of survival, was now focused on shielding her from harm. She could feel her chest tighten as the reality of their alliance became undeniable. Without this creature, she would be utterly defenseless. Then, almost imperceptibly, the bear stepped slightly aside, giving her room to move while maintaining its defensive posture. She realized it was guiding her, teaching her how to navigate danger, how to survive under its watchful eye. Her admiration and gratitude surged, tempered by the fear that any sudden mistake could provoke disaster. She had never been so reliant on another being in her entire life, human or animal. Mini cliffhanger, as the intruder took another step, lightning flashed through the trees, illuminating the scene in stark white. For a split second, she saw the intruder's face, determined, unreadable, and realized that the real test was about to begin. The bear growled low, muscles coiled, and she understood fully. This confrontation would decide not only her safety but the fragile trust between her and the creature that had guarded her all along. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the intruder stepped fully into the clearing. Rain pelted down in sheets, soaking the ground, soaking her to the bone. Her limbs ached from the previous night's tension, yet adrenaline kept her rooted in place, eyes locked on the bear, which stood like a living wall of fur, muscle, and instinct. Amber eyes burned with unwavering focus on the approaching human, low growls vibrating through its chest. The intruder froze, hands raised slightly, not advancing but clearly unwilling to retreat. She noticed a camera strap hanging from one shoulder and a small flashlight in the other hand. It was clear now, curiosity, not malice, had brought this person here. Yet the bear had interpreted the approach as a threat, as it was trained to protect its territory, and now protect her. She exhaled shakily, realizing the complexity of the situation, the forest, the bear, herself, and this stranger were all bound in a tense, precarious triangle of perception and instinct. The bear shifted slightly, positioning itself so that its massive body blocked any path between her and the intruder. Each movement was calculated, deliberate, a language of survival and protection. She noticed subtle nuances, a flick of the ears, a slight pivot of the shoulders, a low rumble that vibrated in the air. The bear was not just responding with force, it was negotiating, establishing boundaries, communicating in a language that transcended words. She slowly stepped forward, voice trembling through the storm. "It's okay, it won't hurt you." The bear's head turned slightly, amber eyes glancing at her, then back at the intruder. She realized fully that her words mattered, that her presence and demeanor influenced the bear's judgment. A delicate dance had begun, a silent negotiation between three living beings, each attuned to subtle cues, each interpreting intentions with an accuracy beyond ordinary human perception. The intruder hesitated, glancing between the cabin bear and her. The camera lowered slightly, flashlight beam wobbling as the storm continued to hammer the clearing. She noticed relief flicker in the intruder's eyes, though fear remained. And then, unexpectedly, the bear did something she had not anticipated. It took a deliberate step forward, its massive head lowering slightly, eyes fixed on the stranger not in aggression but in assessment. Her pulse quickened. The bear had not attacked, yet it was issuing a warning that only someone attuned to its signals could interpret. She knelt slightly, holding out a hand, fingers trembling, whispering softly, "You see, it's not here to hurt." The bear tilted its head, observing, listening, and then returned to its defensive stance, still coiled and ready, yet acknowledging her guidance. Suddenly, the intruder's flashlight flicked upward, illuminating a section of the forest she had not noticed before. A second shadow moved swiftly among the trees, a large wolf, probably disoriented from the storm. The cabin bear stiffened, growl deepening, and she realized in a cold flash that the true danger had not been the human intruder at all. The bear had been anticipating threats she could not even see, guiding her through survival with precision born from instinct and experience. The intruder froze again, now aware of the wolf. Fear rippled through them, body rigid. She realized the forest held layered threats, predators, weather, human curiosity, and instinct-driven protective forces like the bear itself. The cabin bear shifted slightly, huffing, positioning between them, and then, with incredible grace for its size, it moved forward, asserting dominance over the clearing without violence. Its presence alone was a deterrent. She whispered again, barely audible over the storm, "It's okay, we're safe, it's just a wolf." The bear's amber eyes flicked to hers, then to the wolf, then back. It was teaching her a lesson she had never expected. Survival in this world required trust, observation, patience, and respect for boundaries, for humans and for the wild. The intruder, realizing the danger, backed slowly, hands raised in submission, while the bear held its ground. Its growls softened but remained firm, ensuring no sudden movements could provoke an escalation. She felt awe and gratitude overwhelm her. This was not just protection, it was teaching, guidance, mentorship in the wildest sense. Then, as if punctuating the lesson, the wolf retreated into the deeper forest, ears back, cautious of the bear's authority. The intruder exhaled shakily, relief washing over their features, and finally spoke in a trembling voice, I didn't mean to." The bear remained vigilant, head high, watching until both threats had clearly withdrawn. As the storm began to ease, she bent down to gently stroke the bear's fur, grateful beyond words for its vigilance. But from the far edge of the clearing, a deeper rumble shook the ground, low and deliberate, heavier, larger, and closer than anything they had encountered before. She looked up, heart pounding, and realized with dread the night was far from over. Something massive was coming, and this time it might be a threat neither she nor the bear could anticipate. Dawn broke with a fragile golden glow, softening the forest after the storm's fury. The rain had stopped, leaving droplets glittering on pine needles, the cabin roof, and the damp earth beneath her feet. The forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, though she knew that survival in these woods was never certain. Every sound carried meaning, the distant call of a bird, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the soft snap of a branch under a small animal's foot. She knelt near the cabin bear, offering pieces of dried bread and berries she had gathered the previous day. The bear accepted them slowly, deliberately, maintaining the balance between trust and vigilance. She watched its amber eyes, noting the way it scanned the forest even while eating. The bond between them had deepened over the last 2 days, a silent understanding born of shared experience, danger, and protection. The intruder had retreated at the edge of the clearing, finally disappearing into the forest's shadowy depths. She didn't feel anger toward them, only a tempered relief. The bear had assessed the situation, determined the intruder posed no immediate danger, and managed the interaction without unnecessary violence. She realized fully that the creature had not only guarded her but had demonstrated a level of intelligence, judgment, and patience she had never witnessed before. Her mind drifted back to the storm, to the moments when the bear had guided her movements, nudged her toward safety, and positioned itself between her and unseen threats. Each memory carried a weight of awe and gratitude. Survival in the wilderness was a delicate dance of observation, respect, and instinct, lessons she had learned in hours rather than years. As the morning light strengthened, she decided to take the bear deeper into the clearing, offering water from the stream. She knelt by the edge, splashing cool, clear water into her cupped hands, then guiding the bear to drink gently. Its massive head lowered with a grace that belied its size, amber eyes flicking to her with a silent acknowledgement. In that moment, she understood the true depth of their connection. It was not just protection, but partnership, mutual recognition of each other's presence and vulnerability. She noticed subtle movements in the undergrowth, small creatures emerging after the storm, cautious yet curious. The bear observed these with quiet patience, reminding her that this world operated on a complex web of relationships, instinct, and survival. Each choice, each movement, had consequences, and she had been fortunate to learn these lessons from a creature whose intelligence and awareness surpassed her comprehension. Hours passed in a rhythm of quiet observation and gentle care. She learned to move without startling the bear, to respect its personal space, to anticipate its subtle cues. The cabin clearing became a classroom of instincts, the bear its patient, watchful teacher. She marveled at the depth of understanding she could achieve without words, through mere observation, touch, and presence. Yet the forest was never without tension. From the edge of her vision, she caught glimpses of movement, shadows shifting, branches bending, subtle reminders that this wilderness was alive, unpredictable, and always watching. She remained vigilant, aware that danger could return at any moment, that survival was not a guarantee but a delicate balance of respect, patience, and awareness. Just as she knelt beside the bear, letting its massive head rest lightly against her shoulder, a low, distant rumble rolled through the forest. It was heavier, more deliberate than before, vibrating through the ground beneath her. The bear's ears twitched, muscles coiling instinctively. She felt the hair on her arms rise and realized with a jolt that another presence, something massive, approaching with intent, was moving closer. And this time, there was no telling whether they would have enough time to respond. The distant rumble passed, dissipating into the forest like the storm itself, leaving only the dripping of leaves and the soft rush of the stream behind the cabin. She exhaled deeply, muscles relaxing for the first time in what felt like days. The bear remained close, vigilant but calm, amber eyes scanning the shadows one last time before lowering its massive head to rest near her knees. A sense of serenity settled over the clearing, as though the forest itself had acknowledged the trials of the past hours and granted them a fragile peace. She knelt beside the bear, letting her hands trace the thick, damp fur along its shoulders. Each stroke was a silent thank you, a recognition of the protection and guidance it had offered her. She remembered the storm, the intruder, the unseen predators, and the countless moments when survival had hinged on trust. Trust in instincts, trust in the wild, and trust in a creature that had become more than just a guardian. It had become a companion, a teacher, a bond that transcended words and species. As she sat there, the bear shifted gently, nudging her hand with its massive snout, almost as if to affirm the connection. She smiled through tears, feeling an overwhelming mix of gratitude, awe, and humility. She understood now that true understanding of the wild required patience, empathy, and respect, lessons she had learned in the most extreme circumstances, guided by the wisdom of the bear. She stood slowly, brushing off the damp leaves from her clothes, and looked around the clearing. The cabin, battered by the storm but standing strong, felt like a sanctuary. The forest beyond remained alive, unpredictable, but she no longer felt fear alone. The bear's presence had instilled in her a confidence grounded in awareness and trust. She realized that survival was not about domination over nature, but harmony with it, and that bond with the bear had opened a doorway to a deeper understanding of the world around her. Hours passed with quiet observation. She offered the bear more food and water, watching it accept them calmly, and then retreat slightly into the edge of the clearing to stretch and explore. Its movements were fluid, precise, and controlled, the very embodiment of instinct and intelligence. She felt a profound respect for its autonomy, recognizing that this bond was built not on possession but on mutual recognition and trust. As the sun began to set, painting the forest in warm, amber tones, she knelt again beside the bear. This time, she spoke softly, words for herself more than the creature. Thank you, for watching over me, for teaching me, for being here. The bear shifted slightly, its head resting lightly against her shoulder, amber eyes reflecting the fading light. She could feel its heartbeat, steady and strong, and understood fully that this moment was the culmination of their shared ordeal, a testament to trust, survival, and connection in the rawest, most emotional form. The intruder never returned. Perhaps they had realized the depth of the forest's unpredictable life, perhaps they had sensed the bear's silent authority, or perhaps they had simply retreated into the safety of distance. It no longer mattered. The bear's protective presence had ensured their safety, and in doing so, had created a story that transcended fear, danger, and even human understanding. She stood, looking toward the horizon, the cabin behind her, the forest alive with quiet life. The bear remained at her side, a constant, patient presence. She realized that this partnership, forged in moments of terror and awe, had transformed her perception of the world. Survival was no longer just about fear or instinct, it was about connection, trust, and empathy, about recognizing the intelligence and agency of creatures who shared this world with her. The forest exhaled in the fading light, shadows stretching long across the clearing. She knelt one last time, placing a gentle hand on the bear's shoulder, and whispered, "We made it together." Amber eyes met hers, calm, aware, and unflinching. The wild had tested them, and they had endured, not through dominance, but through understanding, trust, and a bond that neither storm, intruder, nor predator could break. She rose, brushing damp leaves from her clothes, and looked directly at the forest. What would you have done if you had found a bear waiting at your door? Sometimes survival isn't just about strength, it's about trust, patience, and connection. Remember, the wild has its lessons for those willing to listen. A final glance at the bear showed calm vigilance softened by familiarity, a silent reminder of the power and beauty of nature. As she stepped into the cabin, the bear remained at the edge of the clearing, watching, patient, unyielding, a guardian, a teacher, a friend. If this story moved you, remember to like and subscribe, and always respect the wild. Every creature has a story worth understanding.